Hi friends, Max El-Hag here. On this episode of the Corpus Animus podcast, I have training think tank coaches Adam Rogers and Brannen Dorman on to talk about the new format changes for the CrossFit Games season. If you're on the go and you want to listen to just the audio version, subscribe to the Corpus Animus podcast on your favorite podcast app. Get better at the sport of CrossFit alongside some of the best athletes in the world in our online training program, The Design. Head over to our website, trainingthinktank.com/DSGN to learn more.
Press it. Ooh.
Left-handed too.
The pinky press.
All right, fellas. Thanks for everybody joining. Brannen, good to see you. Max, good to see you. Adam, good to see you.
Your voice is so smooth.
Is this the first one Adam's actually on now since the one got deleted?
No, he was on the one where he was talking about child molestation.
Oh my God,
that's my legacy.
You don't remember anybody.
Shitty memory.
Max, before we started the last one, he's like, Brannen's first podcast. I'm like, dude, we did like 4 together.
Brannen was on a lot. At least you were only on one.
Yeah.
And it was forgettable.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
okay.
No,
well, apparently everything's forgettable at this point.
Who are you guys again?
Yeah.
So the games announced an update change.
Yep.
Due to all the COVID. Looks like it's finally going to happen. We finally got some answers. We thought we'd just have a little chat. What you guys think? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Things like that. So go ahead and kick us off, Big M.
All right. I'm Big M, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the format change is basically that the CrossFit Games is going to be remote. So everyone's going to do it from their own place. All the information that we have right now is that the top 30 athletes are going to do it. Top 5 qualify and they go to Aromas to do the actual competition. They're not sending equipment to everybody. The athletes voted and they're not allowed to do the workouts with other games athletes. Still unclear as to whether or not they can be in the same gym. I'm not sure how they would police that.
It'd be hard to get around that.
Yeah. And then it's like 2 to 3 days. That was
Can they
literally
do it with
what they
other
said.
regular athletes?
I don't know. And I don't know about fans. Like there's still a lot of questions that haven't been answered. So we're not really giving any like clear information about what the format is that hasn't been released out there. We're still waiting on info, but I think there's still some talking points and things that are cool and interesting. Like number one is that there's a sport going on right now during COVID because there's a lot of them that aren't. And then a downside is like not giving equipment to people I feel like is pretty sketchy for an online qualifier.
I'm kind of hoping they still fix that, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if they're going to try and standardize this to some way, that they're going to try and make sure that everybody has access to the same kind of equipment. It's just going to be too hard to try and make sure that everybody's doing the same kind of test if they're using different variations of equipment, even if it's the same kind.
Yeah.
Different years assault bikes, different kinds of ropes. You know, it's just...
I think the cyclical machines are the ones that are going to be the most not inconsistent that could cause some serious problems.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely some problems and we can kind of go down that path. But, you know, I think the cool thing, like you already mentioned, is that they're doing it. So every, like, look, the NBA's in a bubble right now in Orlando and they've had to figure it out. Of course, they spent $250 million making that bubble. So obviously they have the money to do it. But the reality is that at least they're trying to do something. So I think that's the positive that we can take from this. Now, that also means that there are going to be issues. And we're going to see this like in the NBA as they start the playoffs, there are going to be issues there. If someone tests positive, there's going to be issues when the NFL starts because they're not doing a bubble. And I'm sure people are going to have to sit out games. So I just kind of bring that up because the reality is that even without equipment, at least they're trying to do something. But I do think that there are those, like what happens, Adam, you said it, with assault bikes. We know from the 6 we have out there, they're all different. And the way that they read wattage, the way that they spin, the way that they feel, the way that the air glides on the fan, everything's different on those.
We have a bike that's called the Easy Bike.
Yes.
which is now, I use. Which is now in my garage.
Bring that back now.
Well, legitimately, like it brings in a moral question. If you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars and a potential top 5 spot, if a workout comes out with assault biking in it and the rule is, all right, this assault bike has to be manufactured from X date to X date, I'll definitely have Travis do it on that one.
Sure.
You know, like that, it doesn't make sense to me unless they have some sort of a calibration system. I'm not really sure why you would set yourself up to be like, well, this is the hardest bike in the gym, so we're going to use that one, because you're just basically screwing yourself.
Yeah, to give people an understanding of what we mean by that. So I have done a 10-minute test on that bike and got 250 calories in 10 minutes. I've done at the same time within a couple of weeks on a normal bike, and it was 228 calories. So that's a huge difference in 10 minutes. And I was going way harder at the second test to be able to get as close to
the one that you got less calories.
Less calories, for sure.
I was 212 on the good bike and then 180 on a slow bike.
For perspective, it takes me an hour to do 250 calories.
Get out of here. But that, I mean, so you think about that, and let's say it is 5 rounds for time of 15 cals on the assault bike into, squat cleans or something like that. It's exponentially harder on, not truly exponentially harder, but much harder on one of the newer bikes, let's say, or a bike that hasn't been kind of used over time.
Yeah. I think the fan blades get bent a little bit. I'm not even sure if the calibration monitors are the same from one year to the next, because we got the new ones now, and the new ones actually just seem to count differently. And some of them count to tenths, and some of them just count normal
some
calories.
of them, I'm not sure if it's an illusion that they're counting faster, just because now you can see the tenths and you feel more productive. It's like, oh, look, it's always moving instead of waiting 5 seconds to see a calorie tick over.
Yeah.
But it does seem like some of the monitors count differently at same perceived effort on the bike, which is concerning.
Yeah. And that could be the case too, even if they brought in 50 bikes, like if they are different models, or even if they are the same models. We found with some of the bikes that we have that some of them spin differently. So that brings up another thing. And this is probably comes back to that moral question of, what if someone knows, like we know, that you could literally bend those fans in the assault bike? And I know this may sound horrible, but people think about this kind of stuff, right? I could twist you undo the cage, twist every single fan on there, or the actual blades, and then it spins faster, which means I can go at 90 RPMs comfortably now for 10 minutes. In reality,
you just gave our whole audience a strategy for cheating. We're going to see all the engine path scores in the design. People are holding 600 watts. How did you get so fit? Well, Brannen taught me how to bend the fan blades.
But I mean, that, as silly as that may sound to people, and hopefully most people aren't thinking about that, there are people that are obviously, people are doping to get better at the sport. Like there are things that we do to try to find ways to be the best that we can be. And, hopefully most people are trying to be true to themselves, but the reality is that some people just want to win. So if that's the case, then that's an option for someone when they're in their own gym and they just do that kind of stuff before the judge gets there. And the other thing too, this is actually an indictment on myself. So when I was in college, we had to do the 225 pound bench press test, right? And so the week before we would do it, we'd go in there when the strength coach wasn't in there, and we would go and weigh all the 45-pound plates, and we'd find the ones that were like 43.8 pounds. And we would set those out to the side.
Brannen showing his true colors.
I thought he was going to paint the number 45 over a 35.
Yeah. But it came out to like 221 pounds that we were bench pressing. Of course, everybody did it, but we just wanted to hit big numbers.
I mean, that's another issue with the all online qualifiers. So not just this one, is the kilo to pound conversion. A lot of times they just let people say like, okay, well, this is good enough. This is close enough. But if you're using 2 less pounds over the course of 100 reps, I think it does make a pretty substantial difference.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's definitely going to be some logistical issues and some definite gripes from athletes who recognize that type of stuff.
Yeah, I'm still, like I said, I'm still kind of holding out hope that Rogue is going to come in and give equipment packages for athletes. I feel like at this point, so they've said that they're going to be on board for 2020 regardless of what happened, and then they're going to revisit their relationship as we go forward, depending on what CrossFit did.
Yeah.
But if they're still involved this year, like think about the investment that they usually have in terms of putting on the games, like multiple semis of trucks heading out to Madison or California, wherever it is that they're going to be. Now compare that to what it would look like to do 60 individual athlete packages where we could make sure that everybody has new equipment fresh out of the box. It's put together in front of a judge. All of the weight has been verified. Everybody has the same equipment, and you probably open up a variety of options, just like they did with the Rogue Invitational. Make sure everybody has a D-ball. Make sure everybody has this number of weights. If you want to hand out heavier dumbbells or weight vests that people might not have at their gyms, now all of a sudden you have standardized the equipment, and you've opened up a variety of more options in terms of the kinds of workouts that you can test, which I think is important. Like whatever you think about from the equipment, they're going to face challenges in terms of coming up with a subset of tests that they can really say is suitable for selecting the top 5 that they're going to bring on site.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea and I would like to be hopeful, but I think that there are places that are on lockdown and you'd probably have some logistical nightmares where some people just wouldn't get their stuff. And then it would be like, well, you can't compete now because you don't have that.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that's what they're fighting.
It'd be similar almost to people having visa issues and not being able to come in on site though. Like there's always those sort of like individual cases that might have to be handled case by case, but
yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a once in a lifetime kind of thing. So there are, like we said, there are going to be problems. I guess, we gave our criticisms. And so what are the constructive things that we can say? So you obviously mentioned, hey, maybe Rogue can send stuff out, which I actually think is it could be done, right? They're sending thousands of orders every week anyhow. Yeah. So why not just have a shipment that's sent to each athlete? But if that's the case, let's just say, okay, they can send them these pieces of equipment. What are those for you guys? Like which pieces of equipment have to be sent? And then what types of tests would you guys select over a 2-day period to find the fittest?
Yeah. I'd want to make sure the cyclical equipment, for the reasons that we said, are standardized as much as possible, which means making sure that they're new out of the box and put together with somebody sitting right there. So I don't know if we know this for sure, but there's going to be somebody from the seminar staff there to judge them. Is that right? Like a third party person?
They said they're going to have a judge for every athlete.
Yeah. So there's somebody from like an objective standpoint who could be around and maybe try and at least make sure that they're not any shenanigans going on behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the ways that I would try and make sure is like, hey, cyclical equipment, everybody's new out of the box. It's put together in front of them. The weights are maybe weighed ahead of time to get around the Brannen Dormans of the world.
Sorry. Damn it, Brannen.
If you think about the kinds of things that you want to be able to test that weren't tested in the open, because 20 out of the 30 came through the open, the other guys came from sanctionals, like what is it that you'd want to test there? Maybe weight vest stuff that you can do in front of a camera, maybe heavier dumbbell stuff, maybe a heavier sandbag or D-ball, things like that. Other than that, like, I don't know if you can do rope climbs. Then you're looking at, people might have height limitations at the gyms that they're at.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can do running.
Unless it's shuttle runs.
Shuttle runs is about it, right? And even then, like the difference in variations
25 feet.
The surfaces might be different. Like somebody might have a pad that gives them better traction for their turn. Somebody might have field and they can wear cleats on it.
It's going to be, I would imagine, the very similar to the open and maybe regional style workouts, where just the complexity, in the open, the complexity of getting to like a 225, 245 pound, 265 pound snatch in 17.3 as an example, you got to go through a lot of work to get there.
Yeah.
Now they have the barrier to entry can just be like, all right, we're going to start with 225 pound snatches, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't need to worry about the workout structure being all inclusive. So I think.
So would you say that you would test more, it's more about like actual strength endurance and less about what we consider like in the open, like, oh, that's an engine athlete?
Yeah, I don't want to make predictions because I feel like that's the best way for me to look stupid.
Well, no predictions, but let's say, hey, if they were listening to us and we know that, the reality is we probably should be limited with equipment so that everyone has the same thing. So if Rogue said, we can send this out to these 60 athletes, but it's going to be a barbell, a D-ball, a sandbag, a heavy set of dumbbells, and that's it. Yeah. Then like, how do we construct workouts to find the 5 fittest?
I think I'd want to push the boundaries of things just a little bit further. And what I mean by that is maybe go a little bit longer on your aerobic test. So instead of the 20-minute AMRAP that was in the open, make it a 30 or 45-minute, cyclical based test. Go a little bit heavier on the strength test. We ended at the open at 315 pound clean and jerks. Do something like Rogue where they can keep building and building and building until they find a winner.
Or true 1 rep max test.
Or true 1 rep max test.
The CrossFit Total was at the games. They could do something similar to that.
Yeah.
And that's much easier to just, you can film that and you're in one spot, which I think would be easy to judge.
Yeah. So it's still CrossFit. It's just maybe a different degree of CrossFit because these are our games athletes now.
Yeah.
The reality is, I think that if you said,
hey, for those at home playing the drinking game, every time we say the reality is drink.
How many times have we said it thus far?
Well, Brannen, probably 5, you 1.
All right, cool.
I just was listening to this podcast of this guy that's on radio, and he said, radio has been such a good thing for me because my first radio, he was on some, I don't know, major radio show, and he said, I said, 69 times, or something like that. And he realized, he's like, oh man, I really got to get better at this. And some guy, he's like, some troll messaged me on Instagram after I did it. He's like, ever since I've tried not to say, but I still do it all the time.
We have our troll in real time. Chris is our resident troll.
The reality is it's hard to know if you're saying
the reality is.
Yeah, what I was saying about the reality of the situation is that regionals in the past, I personally don't think was an accurate test to get the most well-rounded CrossFit Games style athletes to the games. I do think if you say who did best in the open, who did best in the regionals, who did best at the games, that if you go through that series of 3 tests, that the person who wins is just the fittest. Like it's broad enough that it's pretty inclusive, but I do think that a lot of times you got regional athletes through to the games that really shouldn't have been there because the testing parameters were so limited. You had 4 heats, you had like limited equipment, you were indoors, you didn't get to swim, you didn't get to run. I think this is just going to be another year that we see that. I actually thought the sanctional system brought, in a lot of cases brought the people that qualified by winning a sanctional were probably more suited to be a games level athlete than a lot of the open qualifiers.
The kinds of options that you have at a sanctional might more accurately reflect what they're going to be stressed out with at the games, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like more of a mini games than the regionals was.
Yeah. So I'm looking at it from a preparation standpoint, and Noah and Travis had the same thoughts, is just think of it like a more complicated open. Those are going to be the limitations of movements, take out a lot of the running, take out a lot of the swimming, unless we want to get kiddie pools and have them do little mini laps in kiddie pools.
Keep going in circles.
Kingsley would win that one. Probably.
I think it's in Living Color of Jim Carrey doing that, where he's swimming laps in a hot tub. So that reminds me of.
So the training has changed for Travis and Noah based around what we know so far.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we don't really know enough to like create radical changes, but we know we're in the gym a lot more. I mean, if the testing environment is going to be the gym, then the training environment is the gym. Whereas the testing environment before was Aromas. So Noah was doing, Miami's pretty damn flat, but he was doing bridge hill runs and going to trails so that he could get variation in surfaces with his running. Travis was running more and running hills more, and like those types of things are just not going to happen now. So it's like, all right, we could start to cut off some of the things, and those types of training, they start to eat away to your overall energy levels. They start to add like you run 5 miles on one day, and then you run 800 meter repeats on another day. You're talking about adding 10 miles of running volume in your week. That's a lot of training. So you can just reduce that completely out. And then if you qualify in the top 5, or maybe put in maintenance mode, go and do a little bit of running, you then qualify in the top 5. You have 5 weeks to then prepare and get yourself ready to go.
It's a big chunk of time between the two. It's the other big takeaway there. So the other thought is, and I don't know if you guys have thought about this much, because I have a bias towards how things are going to get scored. Do you think that the scoring points are going to carry over to the on-site competition?
Yeah. Or how are they going to score it? Are they going to score it like the open? Because
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they've done.
So I pretend like, so we have 2 days of tests, right? That you're going to be doing in-house, maybe 5 or 6. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, they said they're going to give them 2 to 3 days. So I'd say anywhere from 5 to 9 tests. Okay. Because it's probably reasonable to say if it's 3 days that you're doing 3 tests a day, unless they're crazy short or crazy hard.
Yeah. So my question would be, there's going to be some sort of point system that exists to score those tests and sort them and make sure that you're getting the top 5. Do you think that they would reset the scores when they get them on site?
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be interesting. And how do you score?
I haven't even thought about it.
I mean, you could be in the middle of the pack at the CrossFit Games and take 3rd on a workout once you get there. So it's like, are you doing the 1, 2, 3 scoring system, or are you going to try to distribute it so you get 100 points, 80 points, 60 points, 40 points, 20 points.
And then you're going to run into the challenges that they had last year at the games, where it's like, hey, if you've got a reduced field and a fixed table that you're using for your scoring results, all of a sudden it becomes really, really hard to gain ground on somebody.
Yeah.
Right? Because all he's got to do is finish 2nd or 3rd. It doesn't matter if you win the workout by 5 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big advantage if you have a weakness, because if you do have a weak area, the likelihood that there's going to be a lot of other games athletes between you and somebody who doesn't have a weak area is just low. You could have a weak movement, and the other 5 people that made it there, 3 of them could also have that same thing, and you take 2nd on a workout. That's your weakness now.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, is that more fun to watch or less fun?
For sure. I mean, I think the likelihood of there being a crazy upset in a format like this is way higher.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone right now, I'm assuming, is thinking Frazier is going to win, other than Castro, who put out the saying that he's fallen off his game. And maybe it's true. I mean, there's a reality that the fact that we're in a global pandemic and no one knows when the season is, and who knows if he pulled out a rogue and had a knee injury. Like, I always contend that anybody can be beat. He's proven that he can't be beat over the course of the past 4 or 5 years. But you talk about this as like, the situation set up that in this type of a format with what's been going on, that the likelihood of an upset would be way higher. Like if I was a Vegas odds maker, I think I'd probably be this year, the odds of him losing would have been way higher than in previous years when he showed up to competitions and dominated. And you know that like there's only been this amount of time between him competing and winning and the next competition. It's been a long time since, you know, he's been out there.
Yeah,
So-
and there's an end to all good things, right? Especially in a sport where it is training based and how high intensity and high volume it is. At some point, and it's probably not going to be this year. I mean, it seems like the training that he has posted is impressive.
This is the prediction I'm making, that he's going to lose this year.
Yeah, well, I hope so too. I hope Travis or Noah wins, you know. But you know, one of those things that I'm always thinking about is at what point does the body break down? So like.
Or the mind.
Yeah, or the mind.
Like you just don't want to do it anymore. Making all your millions and just ready to, all right, I'm
Yeah,
good.
making all-
Well, here comes the big question then. Let me ask you something, Skip. Well, Skip, if someone beats Frazier,
Is there an asterisk?
is there an asterisk?
Well, the reality is,
No.
no, I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think so. I mean, this sport, if you put an asterisk on it, then I think every year that there's been a radical change, there needs to
Exactly.
be an
Yeah.
asterisk. Like we compete in a sport with no standards. So it's like, hey, fittest in the world during a global pandemic and during all this crazy shit is fittest in the world when
That is a great point.
Yeah. I mean, we've never had strict rules. It's just,
It's
this
always
is-
different.
The sport has
events
been different
and-
every single
and
year.
This is the test. This is the global environment we're in. Whoever wins, and they're getting the same prize money, and it
All
is
right,
what
let's
it is.
shut the podcast down. That's a great point.
Well, the other sports are doing the same thing, and there are no asterisks, right? The NBA is going to find a champion. The NFL is going to
Don't
find
get me
a
wrong.
champion.
There'll be an asterisk there.
Chris will have his own mental asterisk.
Exactly.
The people who want there to be a question of the results are going to ask for the asterisks.
That's
not
the
people
same
who are
thing.
coming out on top.
I was going to say something earlier when you were talking about the regionals test and saying, I don't know if they found the fittest. It's like if someone says that every single year, and not that I agree or disagree with you, but like we are always last year. I can't believe they did a sprint event to cut. And it's like they run all the time. It's just like you're going to find it's going to get cut down. And yeah, maybe the people change, but it's a test and that is what it is. We play golf all the time. It's like the course is the test, and Tiger Woods sometimes plays well and he plays bad other times. It is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I just think that there will always be people that say there's an asterisk or that it's not legitimate, but it's much harder to make that argument in this sport than other sports because of the nature of that.
Going back to the point system, Adam, I know you've had a lot of thought on this, and you guys actually did a little video or was it 2 years ago at the game?
Last year.
Was it last year? Yeah. Which one makes the most sense then for the 30? So the 30 males and 30 females are going to do this 3 days.
So
is it?
Yeah, if I was going to score the games this year to try and get past this sort of 2-stage approach, like the first question is like, if they reset the scoring system, right? So say that you have some sort of scoring table for when it's 30 and 30, and then a new scoring table when it's 5 and 5.
Right.
Was the 30, are they actually games athletes? Because this is a whole different competition now.
Yeah.
Right? Like I would disagree with that. These are games athletes. They need to be involved in what's going on. If you want a scoring system that can actually bridge that gap and be able to have an accurate reflection on like somebody's fitness at the end of the day, it needs to be that relative system, right? Because that scales regardless of the size of the competitive field.
Right.
It could apply to 100, it could apply to 30, it could apply to 5, and you could use the same scoring table for the 2 to 3 days while they're remote, and you can use the same scoring table while there's 5 people at the games.
Can you just give a quick rundown for those that haven't seen that video? Because I think it's a really cool system.
Yeah, so the
Run down.
the relative scoring system is based off of trying to make sure that you are measuring the performance of the athlete, not the relative placement of the athlete. So a rigid scoring table is basically what Max was saying earlier. First place gets 100, second place gets 96, third place gets 92, all the way down. You can change the jumps in there as you want. So it doesn't matter how close first and second place were when they finished. Say that we were doing a 400 meter run and you beat me by 1 second. You're still going to get 100 points. Maybe. You got a bionic knee in there now. So
I can't run.
You beat me by 1 second, you get 100 points and I get 96. So that scoring table is very rigid. What I would say is let's actually try and measure the points off of the difference in the performance. So if you were 90 seconds to run and I was 92 seconds to run, my score should be 2% lower than what your score is. So you could still get 100 points, but then mine might be 97 points.
Right.
And then if Max is 2 minutes behind us, he doesn't get 92 points.
God, would you walk?
First of all, did you do the math on your 2%? And
No, not at all.
yeah, you said that as if you did the math right, and I was like, hold on, that's not right.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to bring it up until you shit on me that I'm 2 minutes behind.
I deserve it. So anyways, Max is 2 minutes behind us.
So anyways, slow poke back
But
here.
if he's, if his time is double ours, then his points should be half of ours. Is that math right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
So say that he gets 50 points, but that way the three of us, if we're wanting to compete, we could compete with that same scoring table, or we could compete with a field of 30 or of 100, because it's all measured with respect to what the first place person did, what the person in front of you did.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also think that has value for somebody who, if you're competing remotely, right? So picture everybody doing the workouts and they can't see the people next to them. Now all of a sudden they have to really race their balls off because they don't know where they're at with respect to the rest of the field. Or vaginas.
Race your vaginas
Or equal
off.
opportunity around here.
Yeah. I have two things. One is a question, which is if we did do a variable scoring table like that, and then they made it to the games and cut to top 5, would you keep those initial tests and you just take the other scores out? Well, I guess if it's a variable scoring system, you don't need to, but if it's a fixed scoring table and they go through, would you say, okay, those tests still count, but now we're removing the other people out of it?
So you're saying when they actually get there on site that they have some sort of points,
Like there's already some pre-established,
Frazier's ahead by 50 points. Now you got the whole week to catch him.
Yeah, something like that. They probably wouldn't do that now that I think about it. But.
Well, I think what they're probably going to do is they're probably going to have different scoring tables, set scoring tables when they get there on site. And I just think that it's a bad approach. I think that you could use a relative scoring system, and I think it makes more sense, especially as the field dwindles down for the reasons that we said.
Well, in that video we filmed, wasn't your point is that we're testing fitness? So
yeah, exactly. And so now you're not as worried about the placement, because the placement becomes less valuable when you're thinking about 5 people. You're
right,
1st through 5th, right?
But I've got to find a way to stay as close to, let's say it is Frazier in first. Like if he finishes in 9 minutes and 20 seconds, I need to be at 9:30 if I can, or 9:40, and not just blow up and get 12 minutes.
Yeah, and I think it also, if there's a test that is constructed in a way where it's 0.1, like the sprint test was a great example. There were people that lost their bid to the games by 0.0 or to the final cut by 0.01 seconds.
Right.
Travis.
Which, yeah.
Somebody we know.
Yeah, which ended up being a big percentage of points, which really is a very, very, very small percentage of fitness change. So that's really like the issue that you're getting to.
Yeah, for sure.
The second thing was you leaned away from the mic and you came back in very smoothly and caught it. And I wanted to say that was really well done.
I saw your hand come up to the mic and I sort of like subconsciously reeled myself back in. This thing's weird. I don't like hearing myself.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, so during Rogue, they streamed all the workouts live. So everybody went at the same time and had a fixed starting time, except there was one workout that Noah messed it up. And of course, Noah would be the athlete that's late. He's late to everything. But this time they said that they're just going to release the workouts and you can do them. So that'll be interesting because, I mean, they say you can't do the workouts together, but if the athletes talk to one another, they're going to be talking about scores.
Which they do.
Yeah, I mean, they're
friends and enemies alike.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're definitely going to be sharing scores.
Redo workouts?
I mean, assuming that they can, they will, but I don't know. Maybe part of the rules is you have a judge and you only get one opportunity to do each workout.
That's
so
what I
if
would
you
do.
want to do the workout, you can.
These people probably need money. You know what I'm saying? These judges, that probably takes some money, if you know what I'm saying.
For sure. So Brannen is going to mess with the plates and we're going to bribe the judges. So we're going to try to get 2 athletes into the top 5 of the CrossFit Games as illegitimately as possible to break the system.
And you want to effort as a Toys t-shirt and a TTT sticker pack?
We got some Corpus Animus mugs also.
I'm feeling very uncomfortable right now.
People don't know when we're kidding and when we're serious. That's good. That's
many
the
comments.
best diversion tactic ever. You just don't know where we sit, where our moral compass is.
I wanted to go back to something that I think is really positive, and that's that the athletes did have a say in how things are going. And we've talked about this for years, but to finally have that opportunity, I think is a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, they got to vote on the dates of the games, and they got to vote on whether or not the athletes could compete with one another, which I think is cool, giving them a voice. But I think they realize that they have to at this point,
right?
You know, given COVID situation, given the fact that they created an athlete union and all this uprising, I think it's like it was necessary that this was happening.
Yeah. But I mean, regardless of the situation that we're in, it's getting us to the right place, just like every other major sport who has that athletes union or players organization or whatever you want to call it. It gives an opportunity for the athletes that are in our sport to have dialogue with the people that are making the workouts and setting up the season.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see how they try and deliver the actual experience of the remote workouts if they can do them whenever they want. Like how are the fans going to consume that content?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I heard that there's going to be a broadcasting company that's involved.
Right. What's it going to look like though?
I don't know. I mean, I would imagine that in order to make this as appealing and engaging as possible, if I was doing it and I am am completely ignorant to whether or not this is possible, but I would get videos of all the athletes doing it and then probably chop it up and then figure out a way how to commentate over like athletes doing it at the same time, kind of like Rogue did, but they did it live.
Yeah.
Where you could do that retroactively and take the winners and the leaders and try to make it into some sort of post-production cool format.
I hope it ends up just being like the normal games where you filmed everybody, or you could have filmed everybody, but it's just Frazier.
Oh my God.
Just person
I would
in
be
first place.
so upset. It's like, oh, here, watch the CrossFit Games. And it's really just Matt and Tia working out.
That's my nightmare. And what Rogue, I think you guys talked about it on the Rogue podcast when they were saying like, hey, you're still highlighting just like 1 or 2 people each time. Like this would have been a chance for the games staff, if they even have a staff that's in charge of this anymore, to actually say like, hey, this is an experience that the fan can control. If you have somebody you want to watch like Travis or Noah, and they might not be in the lead, like we as coaches, like we'd want to see that. We'd want to see what they're doing. Or if like we're their family, we're their fans, like we want to see an athlete, maybe not the one that's winning. And so I was kind of hoping that experience might've been something that they'd try and put a little bit more time in delivering, but I don't see how it's going to happen if they're all doing their own thing at separate times of day. And
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything productive to say in this at this point. So I just have one final question. Unless Chris, you have anything else that we got to cover?
I drank a lot of coffee.
I was, Chris has gotta
You've been
be-
shaking over there the whole time.
My question was going to be, which one of you farted? Cause I know I've been smelling
Yeah, it's
farts.
that dude.
It's Chris. Chris is raising his hand.
Well, that's the coffee.
He's holding his pee.
that's why he's shaking, and that's why the room stinks right now.
I haven't been able to focus. I'm
Yeah.
like trying to stare at Adam, and Chris is back and forth over there behind the camera.
Running back and forth.
Hey, I got a question. If you can answer honestly, or if you feel comfortable, let me just ask the question.
Yeah, question.
How do Noah and Travis feel right now heading into this?
They feel really good. I mean, both of them have crushed online qualifiers before, so they both can train by themselves. Noah wants to come up here to do it, which hopefully we can do. We're still waiting on the actual rules. I think it's, a cool situation. He's been up here before. He feels good about the competitive environment up here. He's comfortable with Trav. So he's pretty pumped and fired up, and both of them want to take a top 5 spot. Both of them are healthy. So I think everyone's feeling good right now. And
Sweet.
my nose burns.
Stings the nostrils.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening.